Yet. Recording in progress.
Mindy.
I haven't seen Mindy yet.
Lori. All right, and then we have our new member today, right?
Yeah, but she's not in yet.
How do you pronounce her name? Brianna?
There she comes. Brianna.
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 Brianna, do you go by Ken for short, or? Oh, you're on mute. I hear you. We got Shay, Van 3, Liz.
Hey Jim, this is Liz. I'm going to keep my camera off. I'm homesick today, so
Okay.
I don't look as nice and pretty as our guest speaker Ruby today. So
I'm sorry. We still don't have a quorum.
Is quorum 6?
Has anybody heard? I'm sorry?
Is quorum 6?
Quorum is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think quorum is 5.
Okay,
it's
then you
majority.
Correct. I have Michael Edmonds, Shay, Jim, Jay Young, Lori Mazurbo, and our new Brianna.
Brianna, correct.
Oh, Lori's here. Oh, there's Lori. Hey, Lori. Okay.
We have...
And
all right,
Mindy's
let's go ahead and call the meeting to order. This is the Commission on Equitable Housing and Development. Meeting is now commenced. It is May 5th, Cinco de Mayo at 4 p.m. This meeting is being held virtually due to COVID-19 to allow for social distancing and protect the public health. As we continue our efforts in meeting remotely, we ask all commissioners and guests to mute yourselves until called upon to speak to avoid feedback and background noise. For those of you who had dialed in using the call-in number, to unmute to speak, dial *6 on your phone. Also, prior to speaking, please announce who you are to identify yourself. As a reminder, this meeting is being recorded. We ask that you use only the chat function to request to speak or to announce that you are leaving the meeting so we can track quorum. Also, in order to comply with the state open meeting law, attendance and votes will be done by way of roll call using audio, not using the chat function. And with that, we'll do roll call. Michael Edmonds.
I am present.
Olga Flores is absent today. Sharia Jimenez.
Present.
I am present. This is Jim Toffel. Liz Wilshin. Liz is absent. Jay Young.
I'm here. Lori also is asking what the number sequence is to come off of mute if you're on your phone. Does anybody know? *6, there you go.
*6, yeah. Mindy Bernstein.
Present.
Mindy. Lori Mazurbo.
Present.
And Brianna Washington.
Present.
And Brianna, do you go by Kin for short, or
Kimbry?
For Kimbry? Okay.
Yes.
Welcome to the commission.
Hello.
We're glad to have you. Okay, now for our ex officio members, Maggie Amato-Tejas. Absent. Wendy Asher. Wendy, you with us? Okay, Wendy is absent. Marianne Bierling. Mark Clark. We're striking out. Vicky Casino. Marcos Ismail.
Present and accounted for.
All right, Marcos. Betty Villegas. Warren Manning.
Present.
And Liz Morales.
Here.
Okay. Okay, so the first agenda item is to review and adopt the meeting minutes from our April 7th meeting. Those meeting minutes have been posted on the CEHD website. Are there any comments or changes? Okay.
I haven't.
Hearing none. I'm sorry.
I haven't read them yet. My apologies. So, do I need to abstain my? Oh, let me do a quick read. Hold on. Okay.
Okay, so without objection, we will approve the minutes. Okay, call to the audience. This is a time when any member of the public may address the Commission on Equitable Housing and Development. Due to time constraints, the total time allocated for this is 15 minutes. Individuals are allowed 3 minutes each. Due to open meeting laws, Commission members cannot discuss topics that are not on the agenda. Items brought up by the public may be considered as an agenda item for a future meeting. Is there anyone who would like to speak? We're just rolling right along today. Okay, well, let's go ahead and go to the next agenda item number 3, which is welcoming of our new commission member, Kinbree Washington. Kinbree, would you like to introduce yourself to the group?
Sure. Can everyone hear me? Yeah, okay. Hello, everyone. My name's Kimbriana. I go by Kinbree. I recently graduated from the U of A with a bachelor's in public health and an emphasis in health promotion. So one of the things I like doing is I really like community outreach, and I also work with El Rio, the Reproductive Health Access Project, helping provide reproductive resources to young adolescents. And yeah, I'm excited to be officially a member with the Housing Commission and to learn more about you guys as well.
Welcome. Does anybody have any questions? Comments? Kinbree, if you have my email information?
I don't think I do.
I will put it in the chat, and if you want to get together at some point, and we could grab lunch or coffee or something, and I'd be happy to just kind of bring you up to speed on the commission and our goals and mission statement and that type of stuff and where we are. Each commission member needs to be a part of a subcommittee. We have 3 subcommittees, and so we can have some of those types of discussions and figure out where it makes sense for you to jump in. But we're glad to have you.
Okay.
Mindy?
Thank you, Jim. Kimberly, the Housing First or Permanent Housing Subcommittee would love to have an extra member. Please keep that. I'm soliciting you guys. We are small and hope that you might consider us. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, good. Well, thank you. So next agenda item is agenda item number 4. And we have Ruby Dillon Williams with the Arizona Department of Housing. And Ruby, I've known you for quite some time, and I don't have your bio. So let me just say you're the Deputy Director of Housing and Community Development for the state. And so we've invited Ruby to just basically share with us and give us an overview of what the Arizona Department of Housing is doing to help us solve the affordable housing crisis.
No, that's not, not a heavy lift or anything. So hopefully I can get through it. Jim, go ahead. Oh, no, I was just thinking, I've known you since 2010, I think. So it's been a long time. So we go way back.
We do.
Do you want me to just go ahead and get started?
Yeah, so I'm really glad you're here. I'm excited that you're here. And, just to give you a little bit of information on the commission, we were appointed by Mayor and Council last year to basically help give recommendations and advise both the City of Tucson's Housing Department and the Mayor and Council on affordable housing issues and equity in the housing area. And so I think what you're trying to do is obviously on a larger scale than what we're trying to do. So, but we're excited to have you. So with that, go ahead and get started.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jim. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for the invitation to speak this afternoon and share with you the work that we're doing at the Department of Housing. Some of you are probably familiar with our new executive leadership, Director Tom Simplot and Deputy Director Cindy Stotler joined our department about 8 months ago. And since then, over the course of the past 8-9 months, we have been very, very aggressive in getting out funding opportunities to support affordable housing development across the spectrum, from addressing homelessness to transitional housing to permanent supportive housing, and then utilizing the low-income tax credit. So for those of you that are not familiar with the low-income housing tax credit, that's the program I'm going to talk about the most during our time here today. And that is the engine that really drives the creation of affordable housing for those that serve 30 to 60% AMI. And I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about that program, but I want to give you a snapshot of the work that has been done over the last 8 months at the department, because it's been unprecedented. We have issued 9 notice of funding opportunities, 9, and we have given out almost between 60 and 70 million. The number is changing because we're about to award another project. And I want to talk to you a little bit about what those NOFAs were funding and what sources they were utilizing to fund, because some of them were state resources like Housing Trust Fund, which is the most nimble resource to use because it doesn't have those federal regulations that come with it. And then the other sources are National Housing Trust Fund, Home Dollars, CDBG, and other resources that we've received in response to the pandemic, such as CDBG CARES Act funding and state fiscal recovery funds. So through that, we put out a $32 million NOFA to support rental housing. In that application process, we received 31 applications. 21 applications created 2,539 units. And then another 10 applications creating 835 units. We helped get those units to the finish line. That was for cost overruns. So those projects that wouldn't have been completed got to the finish line because we utilized a very, very precious resource, the Housing Trust Fund, to create and sustain those 835 units. And then an additional resource to that was we took a resource out of our low-income housing tax credit program and developed a hardship credit. So for those, again, that were experiencing cost overruns, we were able to help another 9 projects, 680 units, get to the finish line, which is huge. So over that actually about $34 million, we created 4,054 affordable housing units across the state. Which is tremendous in 8 months. We were able to make sure those projects got funding and were able to get the resources that they need to keep moving down their pipeline. I wanted to make this important to you and know the work that is being done in your community. And I want to highlight 3 projects out of that funding source I just took that I just recanted for you. One of them is Cascade Apartments. That was 70 units utilizing the 4% low-income housing tax credit that was funded and awarded. Western Winds, another 4% low-income housing tax credit program for 100 units. And Newport at Rodeo, which is a 9% low-income housing tax credit project that created 77 units. Now, you may be thinking, Ruby, you talked about a lot of money and you mentioned 3 projects. And here's my ask of you today. I'm going to go into some more resources, but I want to ask you to support us in lobbying for more housing trust fund. That is how we can make sure that we create more units across the state. And at the Department of Housing, we're the conduit of funding. We receive the funding, state and federal, and we get that out. But we need folks like you and commissions like yours to advocate for resources to be programmed through the Department of Housing so we can continue to fund 4,000, 5,000, 6,000, tremendous amounts of affordable housing across the state. And some of you might not know, but the Department of Housing really focuses on the rural communities. When we receive funding at our state agency, we target our resources first to the balance of state because they don't receive direct funding. Maricopa County, Pima County does receive some direct funding. Actually, found out today that Yuma County also is receiving direct funding. So our resources first go to those communities that don't receive any additional resources from the federal government. So that's really where we focus. Does that mean we don't support housing in Maricopa County, Yuma, and in Pima County? No, we want to do more, but we need you to be advocates for us. Be our voice with the legislature and really advocate for more resources to come to the department. And before I move from there, I want to mention some of those other resources I talked about, like CDBG CARES Act monies and state fiscal recovery funds, because we have NOFAs out right now addressing the conversion of hotels to housing. And we've been very successful in Northern Arizona in converting hotels along Route 66 into shelters for transitional housing. I was just at a ribbon cutting last Friday up in Flagstaff that created 58 units. It was a conversion of a Howard Johnson hotel into 58 units, and they were able to put folks into that housing immediately. Their escrow closed on April 1st, and they moved folks in on April 6th. So that is tremendous. And that is exactly the intention of those fundings, to get folks off the street and into housing quickly. So I wanted to mention that we do still have a hotels to housing NOFA out. And before I leave your call today, I'm going to drop in a link to our mailing list where you can go in and you can look at all the resources that the department has and also receive all of the notices that the department puts out to engage with us and to apply for these funds. There's so much information, so I hope I get to come back and talk to you again, but we are issuing 2 more NOFAs. So the 9 I already talked about and rambled through very quickly, all those resources. 2 more are hitting the streets by the end of the month. One is a preservation NOFA, and I've had numerous conversations with Liz Morales, and we know that there is a lot of assets that are coming out of their 30-year compliance period in the Tucson area. And we want to support you in making sure that that preservation NOFA helps try to keep some of that affordable housing stock affordable. So Liz and I were able to meet a few weeks back and talk about that NOFA, which again is going to come out before the end of the month, and see how we can work together in creating some preservation opportunities. And then another NOFA that'll be coming out this month as well is our Home American Rescue Plan NOFA. $22 million, $8 million of that 22 million is programmed for rental housing. And here's the most incredible thing. The flexibility with Home American Rescue Plan is tremendous. We have this special resource to help nonprofits build their capacity, and we're allowed to use that federal funding to do it. And in addition to that, not only can we help nonprofits build their capacity, we can also give them funding for supportive services and operating costs. So this is a great, great opportunity for those of you that work and have connections with nonprofits to talk to them, to let them know this resource is coming, and to encourage them to apply for it if they haven't ever applied to the department for funding, because we can help them get experience, utilize the resource, and then be prepared to come in the next round for another opportunity. So something to think about and explore with any of your connections in the community to see if there's an opportunity there. And one, again, because I rambled through all of these resources, one thing I can tell you as well, if you are connected to our mailing list, we will always, it's a new practice, have a listening session and an application workshop tied to any of our funding opportunities. So when you see that funding opportunity come out, if you want to join us in our application workshop just to learn a little bit more about that opportunity, even if your organization isn't going to apply for it, as the Housing Commission, I would recommend participating just to learn a little bit about the opportunity, so then you can go out. Remember how I mentioned being a voice for us? You could go out and talk about the opportunity and see if you can engage some stakeholders to work with us to get that funding out. So again, you know, the LIHTC program, all of the different resources that I mentioned, Housing Trust Fund, Home Dollars, CDBG, all of these funding resources are available in and through the Department of Housing. And we want you to know that we have these opportunities available to you all and all of the partners that you work with. So I just wanted to spend some time talking to you about that, and hopefully be able to come back in a future meeting to talk about the current round that we have right now of LIHTC, where we received 33 applications. Again, another unprecedented number. June 1st is our award date. So Jim, if you'll have me back, we can talk about the results of the round. And one thing to keep in mind is it's a multi-year QAP. So this will carry on into 2023, but we are going to accept comments. So when you see how the round went and you look at which projects won, which didn't, if you have suggestions about things that you would like us to change, we still have that opportunity. Even though it's a multi-year qualified allocation plan, you can still come in, make comments, we can make adjustments to make sure we have a successful round in 2023. And if you're looking at me like going, what's LIHTC? What's this? What's that? Happy to go into more detail about that on another time, but I want to leave time for questions. So Jim, I'm going to stop there and see if anybody wants to ask me anything about the work that we're doing here at the department.
Jay, go ahead.
Hi, Jay.
Hi, Ruby. Thanks so much for coming by today, and thanks for all the great work you guys are doing. at the Department of Housing. You mentioned all of the units that have been able to be built and the Housing Trust Fund being such a big part of that. I guess I'm just wondering, what is the state of the Housing Trust Fund? Like how much money is in it now? And, you know, best case scenario, whatever you think that may be under the political circumstances or whatever, what would be a good number to get the Housing Trust Fund up to in order to meet the housing needs in Arizona?
So we're allocated a portion of the Housing Trust Fund. So statewide, there's resources in that bucket of funding. So the department's allocation of that is determined through the legislature, the funding that we're going to get. And you know, the work that we can do with 32 million is like 5,000 units. So if you're you know, we want as much as we can get, right? Because we want to put out as many funding opportunities as we can. So I don't have a suggestion for an exact dollar amount. We want we would take hundreds of millions of dollars in Housing Trust Fund if we could, because it's the most nimble resource. It comes with the least amount of restrictions, and it can go into any kind of capital stack for a project very seamlessly. So we just want you all to advocate that the department should receive as much funds as available that are programmed in the housing space to come in and through the Department of Housing. So, whatever that number can be, we want it to be, but we just don't know as a state what is programmed for housing. So whatever 50 million, 100 million, whatever that is, we would love to be able to have whatever resources are available and get them out. And I think, what we've proven over the last 8 months is that if we do get it, we're going to get it out. We're not sitting on these funds. I gave you units of projects that we funded. And so I think we've shown a great track record, and I'm hoping that will show that we're committed, that whatever resources we get, we're going to really work hard to get them immediately out and serving our communities that are in greatest need. So I know I didn't answer you with a dollar amount, but we really just want you to advocate that whatever we can program for housing, we need to do. And we really need to make sure that we can get it over to the Department of Housing to get out onto the streets. So, if you can be a voice for that, that would be awesome.
Thank you.
Ruby, do you have a sample letter that you've seen that you think is effective that you might be willing to forward?
So we don't.
Have you seen it?
We're Switzerland, right? So we can't weigh in on that. We want to take any resources we can get. So I don't have a letter, but Jim, I know you have an excellent relationship with the Arizona Housing.
I'll track that down.
Yes, yeah, and I'm sure I can give you that piece of information. You can definitely contact Joan's service, and I'm sure she will be able to hook you up. So I would advocate for that.
Okay, Michael?
Jim, I'd like to get in the back of the line because I may have too many questions. I'd like to let Shay and Mindy go first.
Okay, Shay?
Hi, Shay.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ruby. I was just wondering, so what funding source funds the Housing Trust Fund, and is that a reliable funding source? Will it go away? Like, what's the state of that?
So it is comprised of several different resources. So for example, there can be funding, there can be excess proceeds from different agencies across the state. The IDA, Industrial Development Authority, is one of them. So it's usually cobbled together with multiple resources like that. And the reason why I'm naming that one in particular, because that is one that we will usually get funding from if there are excess proceeds. But again, if you work with your, like Arizona Housing Coalition, the group I mentioned that Jim's going to reach out to, they would be able to tell you all of the different organizations that can contribute and that they pull from to create that Housing Trust Fund.
Right, yeah, I remember now I'm remembering the IDA being a big one because of how much I'm on the Tucson IDA, and we talked about similar, mechanisms for a local, our local Housing Trust Fund as well. Okay, yeah, thank you. But so it's variable, basically, the amount of funding you receive.
Yeah, and it goes from year to year, right? Because that number is not fixed. It would depend on, what that agency or authority did that fiscal year. So it could be, I'm totally making up this number, but it could be like 5 million or next year it could be 8 million, or the next year it could be 11 million. You know, it would vary. And we have no way of knowing that. We're just like, thank you if we get anything, you know?
Right. What would it take to get that an actual line item in our state budget?
Advocating for that, you know, with the legislature, and just making sure that, you know, they know that this, you know, the creation of affordable housing is so essential. We're so far behind. I think at the last meeting I went to, we need 270,000 units, you know, so we're, you know, barely making a dent in that. And so we know this is a long-term need. This isn't going to be solved in a year. We need a steady stream of resources, right? We get our federal funding every year, but that's not enough, right? We need additional resources at the state level as well to complement, because if you ever, for those of you that are in the development world, if you've ever worked on a low-income housing tax credit project, if you look at the sources and uses, it's a tab in an application, you will see it can be 3 to 12 resources to get that project done. It's called the capital stack. And I mean, it takes a village. It really does. You know, that is such a perfect way of explaining it, because you need nonprofits that need to come in to provide services. You need your property management team. I mean, there's so many elements to create a successful project. It's not just finding a site. You know, the front end is applying for the tax credit, but you have to keep it sustainable and affordable for 30 years. So if you think about that, you know, the resources that have to go into that project are tremendous. And so we just know that we need more than just the federal resources.
Mindy.
Thank you, Jim. I think you already are thinking along the lines that I am. Ruby, you came in to ask us for support to get more funding brought to the Department of Housing. And I would like to make a motion that we as a committee back you up with that request. Sounds as though Jim's already thinking about a letter, but perhaps we could do a motion vote to support you in the best way we're able to. That's it.
Okay, so there's a motion. Mindy, if you're okay, can we table this until after agenda item at the end, to the end of this agenda item?
Absolutely not a problem. I don't.
Okay.
No attachment.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I've already sent Joan an email asking for a letter, but okay. So Michael, you're up.
Thank you. And I apologize, everybody. I just want to pick Ruby's brain because while she was talking, I was making some notes and looking at some things. And Ruby, I don't need detailed explanations and answers. I'm just trying to get a feel for everything. So
sure.
Based on what I think I know, there are 22 other states involved with low-income housing tax credits. Is that correct, to your understanding?
Well, actually, there's probably more than that. So every state gets an allocation of low-income housing tax credits. That's determined by the state's population and a multiplier. That's how you find out how many tax credits you get every year. So I feel like every state gets an allocation of credits, whether they have a program that is smaller or larger, depending on their state's population. That could, you know, maybe that number you're pulling, 22, could be ones that have a more robust program. But I am part of a national collaborative of state housing finance agencies, and all 50 states have representatives for the low-income housing tax credit program at those meetings. I'll be going to one in June in Chicago, and there's a member from every state representing the low-income housing tax credit program.
Okay. Quickly, in your opinion, are there any states doing anything better or worse, so to speak, in regards to this? So
I mentioned that the engine is, you know, the low-income housing tax credit, but there's a rule book that I also mentioned, where you help stakeholders and partners navigate the LIHTC program in your state. And the Department of Housing creates that book of policies and procedures, and the IRS guides what that looks like. But we have a little bit of latitude in what we can incentivize and encourage and make sure that every community is represented. And that's called the Qualified Allocation Plan. So anytime that we have an opportunity to receive comments to the Qualified Allocation Plan, that is a perfect opportunity to make our program better. So some states are very collaborative, right? They invite everyone in their community, they hold focus groups, and they really, we'd have one with you, we'd have one with Northern Arizona, we would do all of that so we could make the best, most equitable tool to create housing. And so some states do that a little bit better. Now, I selfishly can want to speak very highly of Arizona's process this year, because our director supported us completely redrafting that tool, that rule book, so we could make it as friendly and as accessible to our stakeholders. It went from over 300 pages to 50. So that just tells you right there how much, red tape we cut out of that. So when you ask me, are states doing things better? I think we have leveled up. Arizona is now, at the table saying there are out-of-state developers looking at what we're doing, going, wow, Arizona really changed their process. They're making it very stakeholder friendly. They want housing done. They see an immediate need. We didn't pick just new construction. We didn't pick just rehab. We said anything. If you're shovel ready, if you have a concept in mind, work through that, and we want to see you come in for credits. And then I didn't get to mention, we have a new asset, the state low-income housing tax credit. That just got passed last July, and we already have it available. We've already funded 2 projects out of that resource, and we hope that's going to just create more housing. So I want to give us the props on this one and just say we're really doing some great things here in Arizona, and definitely can learn from other states, but I feel like we've really stepped it up.
Yeah, thank you.
Marcos, thank you. I think you're right. I just saw a little note in the chat. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Marcos. Appreciate that. Now, I'm quoting something that I read that was published by Pew Charitable Trust, and I'm not saying it's correct or anything, but I just want to get your opinion on this statement. It's about 3 sentences long, so bear with me. The owners of federal LIHTC properties are supposed to maintain affordability for 30 years, but the federal government can recapture the credits only during the first 15 years of that period. After that, owners of LIHTC properties can ask for permission to exit the program and convert their properties to market rate units. That sounds to me just a little scary. Maybe I'm misunderstanding those statements. Do we have any situations where there's a danger?
So in Arizona, so the first 15 years are a requirement of the program federally. Then the states can elect to have an additional extended use period. So we add on another 15 years. Some states are different. California has a 55-year affordability period. And I only mention them not to compare or anything, but I come from the private sector. So I have done work nationally, and in one of the states I worked in, so it was California. And so they have 55-year affordability period. And what we've done to push back on that, yes, it is a federal right to exit the program and put your project up for sale at year 15. It's called the qualified contract process. We put a mechanism in our qualified allocation plan that incentivizes developers to keep their project affordable for the first 30 years. And the way we did that was we made it a scoring category. So to be competitive in a LIHTC program, you're going to go after every point. So we made it a point category. So then that doesn't happen. So that was implemented in about 2010 when I was previously with the Department of Housing, and we've had it in there. Now, projects before 2010, we didn't do that. We didn't have that in the qualified allocation plan. So I don't want you to think I'm saying contradicting things, because the older affordable housing stock that has LIHTC in it, yeah, you see the list published by the department. We are losing projects at year 15. And then, the market right now is crazy, right? So people want to sell. They're like, wow, I can make X off my project. I'm just going to get out of the program. So we are really working hard to incentivize developers to stay in the program. And one of those NOFAs I mentioned that's dropping at the end of this month or before is a preservation NOFA. So we're trying to say, hey, if you want to stay affordable, we have resources to support you, and come talk to us before you put your project on the market and exercise this right that you have to do that. So what you read is correct. It is a right that the older projects do have, but we are trying our best to create mechanisms to avoid that in future application cycles and rounds, and stop that process the way we have the right to do so and the ability to do so.
Okay. I've got some other questions, but I'd rather just go ahead and let Joe take over here because the other questions I have are maybe not that important.
Okay. And Jim, I'm so sorry. I only have four minutes left. I have to get to something at 4:45. So I apologize, but I like I said, I'd love to come back and chat more, but Joe, if you want to.
I'll try to
actually, Joe,
yeah, go ahead, Jim.
Go ahead. One of the things.
Oh,
we've got a slight delay. Go ahead.
My question was, we mentioned units coming out of LIHTC and the affordability restrictions. Do you have data on either statewide or locally how many that is in front of you?
So not with me right now as we're talking, but on our website. Before I jump from this call, I'm gonna drop a couple different links in the chat box. But from 1987 to probably 20, I don't know that they have 2021 in there yet. On our website, we list all of the projects that have participated in the LIHTC program, and they're coded by their jurisdiction. So you would be able to sort through that. But I don't want to put Liz on the spot because she's not feeling well, but I know that Liz's group has also extracted assets in Tucson that are coming up on either year 15 or year 30. I know they've looked at that. So you may locally have a better list and a quicker access, but just so you know, there is that list always on the department's website to show you every housing project that has received housing credits from the agency since 1987. And I'll put that in here before I go as well.
Thank you, Ruby.
Yeah, of course.
So
Jim,
Ruby, before you jump off, I've got one, I guess, closing thought I'd like to leave you with. And
sure.
And again, I really appreciate you being here. You guys are doing amazing work, and I think providing a lot of benefit to the state. In terms of Tucson, Tucson is a difficult place to get affordable housing done, and there's a number of reasons behind that. Our wages here are lower than Phoenix, Maricopa County. Our costs to build are roughly 10% more, and it creates a lot of additional challenges to make projects a reality, and for us to attract developers who want to develop in Tucson. Mm-hmm. And so the city is really working hard to try to identify what are things that we can do to incentivize more affordable housing here. And some of the things that the city's done recently is waivers on impact fees for all affordable housing projects. They're currently looking at doing parking waivers, zoning relaxing the zoning codes, and really trying to break through a lot of the barriers in terms of like expedited reviews and things like that. But if there are things that you think we could do as a city to again incentivize developers to want to do things here, I would welcome that feedback. And we could do that offline if you like, but we're looking to be creative and think outside the box and do what we could do down here.
Definitely. And I have some ideas, Jim. I think, that we can definitely explore and see, how to make sure that we're engaging with the developers that are doing work across the state, and maybe do some developer roundtables and invite them to Tucson and tour, like maybe do a tour of some of the sites that could be available and or existing affordable housing portfolio, and see the great work that's being done, and do some education about how to navigate in Tucson. And I think that would go a long way. Like I said, coming from the private sector, I think that was tremendous when the local jurisdiction would invite developers to just come in and do a session with, city staff and say, we have these resources, we've made these changes to zoning, we did, all those are enticing. That's going to make me want to come and look for land in Tucson, so I think that engagement with the stakeholders that are looking for sites and opportunities would go a long way. And that's just off the top of my head, but I think we can definitely have some discussions and really explore what we can do to drive development activity in the city.
Okay, well, with that, we're going to let you go.
Okay, awesome.
Next appointment, but thank you so much for joining us today. This was really informative and helpful.
You're very welcome. And I just wanted to leave you with that. We definitely want to be part of engaging with your organization. And I know Director Simplot wasn't able to be here today, but if I can come back or somebody from our staff can come back, we'd love to be invited back to engage with you all again. So thank you so much. And I am going to leave those links that I promised before I go.
All right, sounds good.
Okay, thank you so much.
So I'd like to go back to the motion that Mindy made to basically a letter of support from the commission on the Housing Trust Fund, which we could send to our local legislators. So is there somebody who would like to second that?
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. So we're going to open it up for comments. Go ahead, Jay.
I think it's a great idea. I guess I'm just wondering if we're going to make a motion, if we should be any more specific about what exactly it is that we're wanting to say, or are we going to say, $1 billion for the Housing Trust Fund to solve all of Arizona's housing problems, or 50 million? I mean, there's a lot that we could be asking for in this letter. I'm just wondering kind of what the process would be to get in there, what we want to get in there.
Well, originally, when the Housing Trust Fund was established, the idea was that any unclaimed property in the state, they would put it out for auction, and then 50% of the proceeds would go into the Housing Trust Fund. So if you go back to 2004 to 2006, 2007, my recollection, I don't know the exact numbers, but I think it was in like the $8 to $10 million range. So with inflation, it'd probably be a little bit more than double that now. And when the financial crisis hit in 2008, that was when the state decided to basically sweep those funds into the general fund. And I think they left like $1.5 million or $2 million in the Housing Trust Fund, but it was a small portion of what was there originally. So it could be the ask of going back to the original intent of 50% of any unclaimed properties, or we can try to figure out what we think is an appropriate dollar amount. What I was thinking we would do is get the letter from Joan and the Housing Coalition on what they're asking other legislators, and maybe start with that, and we can bring that to our next meeting and make any adjustments that we see fit. Mindy, did you want to make a comment? Okay.
Yeah, I was just wondering kind of where we're at in the process is in terms of the state legislature. Is this is this an item that's going up for review soon, a bill, or what's happening? Is it just in general support of the Housing Coalition, or?
So I can tell you, I sent a letter to the governor's office last week asking about them using the American Rescue funds, ARP funds, to replenish the Housing Trust Fund. And the Housing Coalition is trying to establish a meeting with the governor's office. It was going to be next week, but I think it's going to get pushed to the following week. Basically advocating on behalf of getting that up and going sooner rather than later. So I know that there's a lot of activity around it now. So I think it would be well timed to get something out here, you know, within the next month if we can. That's my general feeling, just based on everything else I'm hearing.
Yeah, that makes sense to me, and I like the strategy of having it tied to some, you know, some not necessarily dollar amount, but some strategy, right? That, like, exactly what you're saying, like either restoring it to its previous kind of former glory, or getting some somehow the line item in the budget in the general fund, you know. I don't know how feasible that is, but.
Hey, Liz, do you have any comments or thoughts on this?
Sorry, Jim. I was just looking up what the timeline, because the state legislature is definitely working on bills, which I think includes the budget process. So we do want to probably get it in sooner than later. I was looking for the dates, but I just know that they're in session right now. So it's definitely part of the work that they're doing. But I don't think I have anything else to add.
Is this something that if we get a draft, we can send it out to the commission members?
Absolutely.
And ask for changes via email and try to get something out in the next week?
Yes. And then people, and then people can also, if they want to do it as a person, you know, doing it personally, individually, they can take that letter and craft it as well for their personal use.
And I guess my thought was we send it to the legislatures from Pima County, focused on our local legislatures as opposed to statewide. Is everybody in agreement with that?
I agree.
And
I would also send it to mayor and council so that they can, through our Andrew Greenhill, who represents the city with the state legislature, to make sure that they know where the commission stands on this issue, and to urge them to make the same pitch.
Okay.
Yeah, again, I'm just kind of, you know, haven't given this a ton of thought and just want to throw out there, you know, I jotted down that Ruby said that, you know, $30 million, I don't remember exactly, had produced just over 4,000 units of housing. And then she said how many units of housing were needed. And I think my quick math was like, oh, that constructed less than 1% of what's needed. So I guess I'm just advocating here for really going big and making it apparent how much funding is actually needed. I mean, I'm just like 50% of recovered property. I mean, you know, that's great, but it's really not going to do a whole lot. So, I mean, when I said $1 billion, I was only half joking. I mean, that's the kind of numbers I think we're talking about if we actually want to, you know, build the affordable housing that's needed. So, you know, again, I don't know exactly how this letter should go. And I know that there are, you know, political considerations, but I mean, realistically, if we're talking about, you know, actually building the kind of affordable housing needed, it's a lot. So, you know, I don't know if that's, again, just kind of going back to what our strategy is with our letter. You know, I think it might be useful to really kind of put it in context of like what it would take for the state to put a dent in the affordable housing crisis. I guess I'm also just concerned considering how the state legislature has dealt with education when it sees the actual need of funding for education. I mean, I feel like they're kind of in the same ballpark. So anyway, just thinking maybe go big and be realistic about what it would actually take.
Shay?
Yeah, I mean, that's why I was wondering too. I mean, to me, it's at the point where it needs its own line item in the general budget. Like, and that is like, to me, that would be you know, the go big or go home ask, but it just seems so unfeasible. Like the realist in me is just like, that seems like impossible, an impossible ask. But
it's not impossible, Shay, because at one time the state lottery was funding the trust fund, and then they stopped that. And so there was a bill, I was looking at the list of bills that the Arizona Housing Coalition puts out. There was something for the trust fund, but these have been mainly one-time kind of deposits. I don't know if that's the right word, but what I'm looking through the list, the best I could see right now is there is a bill around the housing trust fund. At least 50% of the monies transferred into the trust fund from the Arizona IDA must be used to support emergency and transitional homeless shelter services. It has passed in the Senate. So that's one bill that I think it doesn't say how much is in the trust fund, but it does have an impact. So I'll keep looking for it. It'll help us draft a letter to state, you know, we support this particular bill. But I believe there was a bill, and I'm not finding it now, of how much they're proposing to put into the housing trust fund.
Thanks, Liz. And also, I think the economic arguments need to be made, you know, that without affordable housing, our economy will suffer. I mean, there's no way that we can continue to cater to millionaires and outside investors, meanwhile not bolstering, you know, the working families and, you know, labor force that makes up the state, you know. I mean, it's just crazy that, you know, it's a ripple effect. And I feel like if Arizona doesn't take it seriously, like the growth is gonna stop. Like everything's just gonna halt.
Okay, I did find it, guys. Just so you know, it's House Bill 2528. And this is in the last update was at the end of April. And they're proposing 100 million to the Housing Trust Fund. So there's
is that from the Housing Coalition?
Yeah, this is the breakdown. So ask if you have a personal relationship with legislators, please reach out and ask for the support of the 250 million request. That's what Arizona Housing Coalition is putting out, is that's what we need. Part of that is there's a surplus of stimulus funds called Go Large and Go Home. So they're saying instead of 100 million, we really need 250 million.
Well, and just to put it in context, I was just reading the city of Austin just by itself has approved 550 million in housing housing bonds in the last 4 years. So just one city in Texas is looking at 550 million. So
yeah,
context.
What, 2528? Is that what you said?
Yeah, let me look at it again.
Area of agencies and
They
aging
changed it's House Bill 2528.
2528. I think, okay, I'm looking at something old, I guess.
It was a Senate bill before. It was Senate Bill 1531, but it's since changed.
Okay. Joe, go ahead.
Yeah, just to the largeness of the math involved. Oh, and I think Shay hit the nail on the head right there, but just to the largeness of the math involved, if we said that $32 million builds 5,000 units and we need 270,000 units, that's 1.73 billion.
Keep in mind, you know, realistically, we can't build them all at once. You know, in Tucson, we typically build maybe 1,000 units a year. You know, we could probably double that or triple that, but it's going to take some time to meet that entire gap.
I heard if you put $1 billion in your trust fund, the housing ferry shows up. So might be something to shoot for.
Shay?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, when we go to the agenda items locally, there's some things I want to, because it's not just housing, right? It goes back, Jim, to everything you're saying about all the support that it takes. It's the we're at a shortage of labor across the industry in terms of plans reviewers, engineers, design professionals, including laborers, just people physically building. Like, there's so many gaps across the board. It's not even, we don't even have enough workers basically to pull off the magnitude of what needs to be pulled off. And so I feel like part of what we can be doing locally is chipping away at some of those, like, again, reducing the thresholds to entry, reducing the barriers to entry across the board. You know, but I have some suggestions for us as we're looking at our budget locally with PDSD and asking to fully fund PDSD because they're way understaffed right now with plans reviewers, and it's creating a huge bottleneck.
Yeah. Okay, so was going back to the original motion. Is there any other comments before we put that to question to vote? Okay, so just to recap, the motion is for the CEHD to provide a letter of support of the housing trust, to replenish the housing trust fund to our local legislators, Mayor and Council, and Andrew Greenhill. And I'll get a draft of that. We're going to send it out via email, get comments, and we're going to try to get that out in the next week or so. So any final comments before I put that to question? Okay, Michael Edmonds.
Aye.
Sharia Jimenez.
Aye.
Jay Young.
Aye.
Mindy Bernstein.
Aye.
Lori Meserbo.
Aye.
And Ken Brianna Washington.
Aye.
Okay, the ayes have it. Okay, so our fifth agenda item is a subcommittee updates. The first subcommittee is housing segregation. So Jay, I'm going to hand it to you.
Hey, Jim, thank you so much. I just wanted to point out, I believe that we had talked about having for an agenda item during this meeting, discussing our proposal from last time to do a deeper dive into equity, whether that be a study or something of the like. And I didn't see that on the agenda today. So I don't know, maybe we can get pushed to the next meeting, but wanted to bring that up real quick.
Ernesto, can you make sure that gets on the next agenda, please?
Will do.
And Jay, real quick, while we're just talking about this, did you want to lead that discussion?
I can. Yeah, I mean, I guess the idea is, you know, we don't really have a foundation that we're working from to really understand equity in our community and therefore come up with solutions dealing with equity. And I think that, you know, a lot of our attention is rightfully so on affordable housing, but there's a whole other piece that I believe and the Housing Segregation Subcommittee believes we should be looking at, which is equity, which is, you know, affordability is certainly a piece of that, but there's a lot more to it. So I guess I can lead the discussion. I guess I'm more interested just in, you know, getting feedback from the commission about how we get to a point where, you know, we've identified the major equity issues, you know, not just like anecdotally because we're on the commission, but, you know, factually establish those issues and then, you know, think about how we address them. So I guess I could lead that. I don't know exactly, honestly.
Okay, well, we can talk about it offline and come up with a plan.
Sure.
But I will make sure that gets on the next agenda. I apologize about that.
No problem. I see Mindy has her hand up.
Thank you. I was going to ask Jay if there was I trust in your capabilities to lead us through a process of defining equity. However, is there someone else that you think of or can consider would handle, do the facilitation instead of you? Do you want to do it?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm just kind of confused about like what exactly would I be facilitating? I mean, would we just be talking about like what are potentially some equity issues and how could we drill down? Or, are we talking about more like at this point, having an expert or somebody who understands this topic and, how to really, whether it's in a report or some other form, uncover what the equity issues are in the community, again, from a factual perspective. So I guess that's why I'm kind of struggling with, leading a process. I don't exactly know what that is. So I don't know. Did anybody else have any idea? I mean, obviously, Jim, you and I can talk offline, but does anybody else have any thoughts about that and just kind of the idea of moving forward? Shay, I saw your hand, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I'm wondering if we can build on some of the work that's already been done. Like I remember there was that study that was done by the gentrification study that was done. I thought that was a really good start. What's that professor's name at the U of A? It's Gary Pivo. Yes, Pivo. Thank you, Joe. Yeah, I thought that was a great start, and I thought he had kind of a nice, I don't know. I think that there's people already working on these issues, my guess, especially at the U of A. So maybe we could just build on some of that work.
Well, and yeah, no, that's a really good point, Shay. And I think also, the city is doing some of this work. It's just not really in an area where, it's not compiled. It's not in a space where I feel like we can kind of get our hands on it and dig into it. It's kind of floating out there. I did also notice like the Pima County Affordable Housing Task Force. Like if you Google it, I guess they've got a website and they've got like documents that they are kind of compiling in one place. So even something simple like that, where we're kind of, dropping these documents in, even the HAS plan. I know we've talked about it a lot, but that's a piece of the puzzle. So yeah, I think that's a really good place to start. But I do think also, with the cities, now having hired a chief equity officer, that's where I feel like this kind of work should be being done. And I think it actually kind of goes into some of the other things we talked about at our last housing segregation subcommittee. So I don't want to steer us there yet, but I think, yeah, Shay, your point is well taken. Like, let's get the stuff together that's been done and at least, think about that more deeply before we maybe go into a bigger study. I don't exactly know what that looks like.
Mindy?
Yeah, I'll be brief. The person that you just mentioned, Jay, I couldn't keep his whole name in my head. Besides going in and taking a look at what's already been studied which is important, but that would sound like, he sounds like the kind of person we'd want to perhaps come in and facilitate our conversation.
Was it Gary Pivo? Is that who somebody mentioned? I think that's what
you mentioned his name. He's the new equity.
Oh, yeah. Actually, it's a she, and I do not remember her name off the top of my head. The new chief equity officer.
I had a 50-50 chance. That was just an idea of, we've got somebody with expertise here in Tucson.
Yeah, and I would love for the chief equity officer to come and address the commission as well.
Agree.
Yeah, that has been the plan, but I don't think we've nailed down when she could join us. So we will definitely see if we can get her on the next meeting.
Cool.
Great. Just one last one. I think it's going to take it might take us a couple of rounds of meetings to fully flesh out. But thank you, Jay, for staying on top of this and keeping your eye on it.
Sure. And I mean, again, I just thinking off the top of my head, I think Shay's right. I mean, the place to start is to really, take stock of what we already have and kind of get an understanding of that as a commission so that we can, start to direct some more action equity-wise. So, but yeah, I mean, in terms of just kind of framing the discussion a little bit about, you know, some equity issues that are seen in other places and, you know, things we've talked about here, you know, some other cities maybe that, you know, have dived into equity a little bit more deeply in some other studies. I mean, I can kind of, I could theoretically do that, you know, in, you know, 10, 15, 20 minutes, however long we want to talk about it at a next commission meeting. But I think, you know, in terms of actually leading a process, I don't really feel like that would be in my wheelhouse necessarily. So, okay, so with that, thanks for taking the time to talk about that. We have had another housing segregation subcommittee meeting. I guess it maybe was just last week. And one of the things that came up that we spent quite a bit of time talking about is equity and looking at equity internally within the city of Tucson, within HCD. And what sparked this conversation, I'm sorry that Vicky's not here today, but she brought up a number of issues regarding accessibility of materials that the city is putting out, you know, some new maps that the city is producing that are really excellent. And I know that Laura Sharp has spent a lot of time working on, and she was a part of this conversation. But essentially, the short story is that there's some feeling that it's been a struggle to make the things that are being done internally, even with this commission, accessible. And we were particularly talking about persons with disabilities. So I don't really have, I wanted to share that on the one hand. I don't know that we really came up with, and Mike and Lori, I guess Lori, you weren't at the last one, were you? Yeah. Mike or Joe, if you know, you have anything to add, please jump in. But I think the idea was, though we didn't have something to, a motion to bring to the full commission, that we think it's critically important for, if we're going to start looking at equity issues outside this, the city bureaucracy and outside of our commission, and looking, you know, outside into the community and thinking about how to solve some of the equity issues, that we really need to look internally first and make sure that equity is being practiced within the bureaucracy. Vicky just brought up an example of dealing with a couple of issues and a couple of things coming out kind of media-wise, or tools that are made available to the public that aren't fully accessible. And in talking to Laura in particular, it didn't seem like there was a good resource or a tool, effective tool, I should say, within the city bureaucracy that was helping staff make sure that things were accessible to persons with disabilities. That's where the conversation centered, but I think, you know, we could expand it out even more broadly to make sure that, again, we're getting adequate participation across the board. Persons with disabilities are being included. So we talked for, you know, 30, 45 minutes about that particular topic. So I just want to bring that to the commission's attention, that, you know, focusing internally and with the work that we do day in and day out is critical if we're going to talk about equity on a larger, kind of a larger scale. Just kind of looking back at my notes to see, you know, and again, I guess just really going back to what we were talking about, making sure that we're talking about equity more broadly and not just focusing exclusively on affordable housing, again, that being a major equity issue, but there are a lot of other issues. So I think that's where we keep landing, and why we keep going back to this idea of, you know, gathering information or having a deeper study, because while we're working on the affordability piece, there are larger equity issues that if we do not address affordability, and creating more affordable housing is not going to address by itself. So I think that's generally the summary that I would have of our conversation. Mike or Joe, I think you guys were both there. Anybody else that was there have anything to add to that? All right, that's my report, Jim. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Appreciate it. Next item is Housing First. Liz?
That's Liz Wilson, and she's not.
Oh, Liz Wilson.
Yeah.
Right.
And we still haven't had a meeting yet, but what I'll do is I'll ask Vanessa Gonzalez to reach out to Liz Wilson about getting that sent out to the people on the committee so we can get something on the calendar. So we'll assist her with scheduling that.
Okay. Joe?
I thought Housing First had a subcommittee meeting on April 27th. I watched the video for it. Mindy, you were there, right? Do you maybe have notes? I kind of followed the agenda. There was a kind of a representation of shared language like we had, I think, in March 2021 at the general CHD meeting. And there was talk of subcommittee goals in that. I watched it on YouTube the other day.
That is correct. Thank you, Joe. I'm feeling very shy about talking right now. I don't know why, but Michael, will you take over for me?
I will. And to be honest with you, everyone, I don't really have a report because I was expecting, Liz to lead that subcommittee, but I'm taking a look at my quick notes. To be honest with you, my notes were probably like selfish things that I wanted to look at later. Somewhere in our conversation, Mindy, feel free to, and Joe, feel free to elaborate on this. My notes show that I had an interest in somewhere in our conversation, I made a note about looking into modular homes, as well as abandoned buildings and vacant lots, as well as taking a deeper dive into opportunity zones. Where they are, what an opportunity zone specifically means, what goes along with the possibility of having an opportunity zone. Also, I made a couple of quick notes about safe homes, the term safe homes and HUD, to look into that. And as well as in regards to the subcommittee itself, the Housing First subcommittee, I wanted to, at some point in the future, maybe separate some of the language in regards to shelter, housing, and home. And those were some of my thoughts that I made notes about in our subcommittee, if that means anything to anyone.
I'll just jump in and say thanks, Joe. And I didn't realize there was a meeting, so I'll make sure I'm on the next one. Thank you.
If I can make one kind of suggestion and for the next meeting, it would be to look at that hotel to housing NOFA that Ruby was talking about. Does everybody know what a NOFA is, by the way? It's an acronym.
Notice of funding opportunity. Yeah.
Availability. Yeah.
Oh, NOFA. I apologize. You're right.
Notice of funding availability. Right. So it would be nice if we could find somebody that would submit. We've got some hotels specifically in the 05 corridor that might work really well for that NOFA.
Jim, just so you know, we did, Ann and Jason and I met with the state to talk about that opportunity. So we are exploring that. The only issue is that with the 3 sites we have now and the amount of money it takes to do the supportive services, we might be able to get the money to acquire a property, but then we'd also have to find the money to do the support services. So that's kind of where we're at with that. And then if we were to do that, submit an application, we'd have to have site control and an environmental done. So as we've looked at a few additional hotels recently, and I've also actually talked to Pima County because I suggested, because they have a hotel that they've been using. And so, I think we need to try to take advantage of that as well, but trying to find all the funding to keep it sustainable, because you do have to maintain it for 5 years as transitional housing.
The other thing that might be I don't know if you could, the Home America Rescue Plan, that $22 million that they said was going to be available for nonprofits to help build capacity and do those services. I don't know if those could be used together or not, but
Right. No, we definitely, Monday, Arizona Department of Housing, and I'm not remembering Ruby bringing this up. If she did, I'm repeating. Just that Monday, they're going to have a roundtable, and they're going to discuss the funding that's coming out. So we'll be on Monday to get more information and learn more of the details of what's eligible and what's available.
Okay, that's great. So Mike and Mindy, anything else?
No, I wish I did have a better report for you, Jim, but I just have, what I was focusing on.
No, you were great.
Okay, next is affordable housing. Sharia?
Yeah, we had a pretty, I think we ended early, actually. We had a pretty good meeting, but short. We're going to be basically moving forward with the survey to help us kind of, we have a big list of things we can be doing and working on locally to support affordable housing. And we're kind of trying to whittle that list down into, a smaller list of action items. So there's a survey that went out. Thank you, Sarah, for putting that together for us. I think I went through the list briefly last time, but should I pull it up again? But yeah, it went really good. I think we just know that there's a lot to do, and it's hard to know where to start, because there's just a lot of things to tackle. And everything you're mentioning, what you were mentioning earlier, Jim, about construction pricing being more expensive here, I'm just like, I feel like, again, it's all these layers, right, of added bureaucracy that I think Tucson has that Phoenix doesn't have, and Phoenix is much more business friendly in a lot of ways. It is, I don't know, there's a lot of factors. It's just hard to know where to start. But I think that if we can do anything to make ourselves more competitive on many levels with Phoenix, that would be great. Let me see if I can, I have the list. Okay, so I think we whittled it down to some categories around zoning. Obviously, we talk about zoning a lot. Setback relief, density bonuses, parking, expedited plan review, incentives for nonprofit and for-profit development and partnerships, flexibility for design review. But I think that really only applies to design review is atypical. That really only applies to historic and special districts like the IID. Reinstating over-the-counter review, that's a huge one, I feel, for me, for small business and homeowners. That's like a huge resource. And it's one of those ones that actually helped everyone, including big developers. I mean, it just was such a critical, valuable resource. It's gone. Revisiting the flexible lot development option. Then funding, we talked about funding, general obligation bond. You had mentioned that earlier, Jay. I think that is a huge way other cities are just getting more money flowing, is getting those bonds, passed. And some of them are incredibly, like Denver too, passed, again, hundreds of millions of dollars in bond funding. That's a huge one. I really feel that we could be pushing more on pursuing the grant opportunities. There is a lot of this ARPA money out there right now, but there's always, endowments, foundations, etc. The Housing Trust Fund, again, is there a way we can, get general, similar to the state at a local level? Can we get a line item in our budget to support our local Housing Trust Fund? We have one also in Tucson. Increasing subsidy. And I think Jim brought up a good point last time too, that I think we do, considering we're a city entity, want to try to focus on things we can do within the city. So I think that putting this list in that context also kind of narrows things down a bit. Increasing subsidy or allowing higher rents will justify higher loans. I'm not sure what that comes. Loan products, federal funding, right? Asking more from HUD and lobbying for more. I think that's also something we could be doing in addition to other lobbying we're starting to do as an entity. We talked about, ways to reduce all of these soft costs, but, also that's probably partly why construction is more expensive here is the fees in Tucson are really, really high. The city, city tax incentives we could ask for, real estate tax exemptions from the county, utility reductions, the water meters, electrical meters, those are all really, really high, as are the, the permit fees, the impact fees. We just have a ton of fees here for construction and development. And I think proportionally, Jim, would you say they're probably higher than Phoenix? Is that part of what's also
the water meter fees?
Well, yeah, just in general, our fees for development.
I think the water meter and the wastewater fees are some of the highest in the state. I don't have a lot of data on the impact fees. So okay. I don't know about those.
All right. Then we talked about ways that we could be asking for more support within the city and municipal jurisdictions, county, city, HCD, expanding access to project-based vouchers. I think for us as an entity to expand our pool of partnerships, or I think that was for HCD to expand their pool of partnerships for new projects. Surplus land, site acquisition, land banking, land donations, there's stuff that the city and county both own, which I think has come up in other commissions as well. Adaptive reuse also came up in our commission as well. There are some vacant public buildings. Some building types I think are way easier to do this with than others. Definitely hotels, you already kind of have bathrooms and some infrastructure there. I think schools are much harder and more expensive, but it's definitely been done, let's see what else. And then, yeah, revising maybe some state legislature about these 30-year terms with affordability, and revising state statutes also to include for-profit developers as well as nonprofit developers in certain categories of, I think it was funding. But yeah, that's it for now. I mean, again, it's a really big list, and so we're just at a point where we need to narrow this down, I think, to try to figure out and prioritize where to put our energy. But if people have strong feelings here, I mean, now's a great time to weigh in on some of that.
So Shay, if I can, I'm just going to add one thing. I think the Affordable Housing Subcommittee came up with a really good list of a lot of different things that can be done. So what we talked about doing was prioritizing the list based on two criteria. The first criteria, is it something that's easy to implement or is it difficult to implement? And the second criteria is it something that's going to have a high impact or a low impact? And so obviously we want to focus on the areas that are easy to do and are going to have a high impact. And the bottom of the list will have the ones that are difficult to do and will have a low impact. This is a way of prioritizing what we think is kind of the low-hanging fruit. So Sarah Meganson put together a poll, I think, to start that process. And so the next, I think, probably 2 to 3 meetings is going to be to try to whittle that list down and really try to determine the areas that we think we should be focusing on. Okay, so any other questions on any of the subcommittee updates? Okay, agenda item number 6 is HCD updates. And since Anne's not here, Liz, I'm sorry, we're gonna have to hand it to you again.
Nope, I'm ready for it. So I just wanted to share, and I'm hoping Neto or someone can put the link to our annual report we just completed for 2021, highlighting, thank you, highlighting all the, some of the highlights of things that we were able to accomplish in 2021, as well as the goals for 2022. So I wanted to make sure all of you got to see that, and can always bring up next time questions you might have from reading that report. I want to acknowledge, I think there was I think her name's Megan, was on here earlier. She may have gotten off the phone, but there was, I want to kind of highlight Jim. There was an article done around tax credit projects in affordable housing in the Arizona AZPM. So if you haven't seen it, that was just put out, I think, last week. So good job, Jim, on helping put a picture to that story. Then we are going to mayor and council. It was originally going to be May 19th. I think it got pushed to June 7th. We will confirm that through an email. So if you want to join the study session, it will be around expanding the Thrive model. As many of you know, the Thrive in the 05 has been a long time initiative that Allison Miller has headed for the department, along with a lot of other partners. And it really focuses on not just housing transformation around Tucson House, but also economic development, workforce development, crime reduction. And so because that has been a successful program, Mayor and Council has allocated funding from the local American Rescue Plan funds to expand that into another area. The presentation that we will be doing is highlighting 3 potential areas in the one area that we're recommending, which is the 29th Street corridor up on the eastern side of 29th Street, like around Swan and Craycroft area. So that presentation will be for Mayor and Council to confirm if they want to go with the staff recommendation or a different area. And so that's, again, we will confirm once we know for sure. I believe it'll be June 7th. It'll be a study session item for Mayor and Council. Also, just to say, speaking of Thrive in the 05, the Metropolitan Pima Alliance did award a couple awards to the city of Tucson. One was our Thrive in the 05 effort, which was a collaboration and planning effort, and also the Sunshine Mile process. So Quorum, congratulations for that and all the work that PDSD and again, many other partners on that. So that was fun to have received those awards. This past mayor and council meeting, the annual action plan was adopted, which that is around our federal funds, which is CDBG, ESG, Home, HOPWA, and some of the other programs. So that has to get submitted to HUD for approval, but that will ensure that we get our funding for the next fiscal year. And then finally, I think we're in a good place to announce that in coordination with Pima Community Land Trust is going to help us develop housing in the Barrio Anita neighborhood. It'll be going to mayor and council for approval, where they're purchasing the land, the parcels. We have 3 parcels, and that will develop 4 parcels. Beautiful homes designed by someone we all know and love, Shay. So we are moving forward with that. So that's exciting. Another project that hopefully will help us with our HASP plan. That's was one of our goals to do. So, and finally, many of you may or may not be aware of the Emergency Rental Assistance Program. That is a program that we have been funded through the U.S. Department of Treasury, through the American Rescue Plan. And we expect that the funds allocated to the city of Tucson will be exhausted somewhere around the end of June. But there is still funding with Pima County. So the application portal will still be the same, but Pima County will continue doing the work that they do to spend the funds. Pima County is also working with the state about with getting some additional funding that the state has not been able to spend. So that will be a program that will continue, but the city of Tucson itself, as far as our allocation, we will be not continuing because we have not seen or don't expect any additional funds. So fortunately for the public, they won't really notice that. We're trying to keep it as seamless and not not disruptive to the public. So that's my update.
Awesome. I'm just going.
Jim, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Leticia is with us, and she'd like a few words about the down payment assistance program.
Okay, go ahead, Leticia.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I just wanted to inform everyone that you can now go onto HCD website, and we do have the down payment assistance updated to the latest and greatest. I'm hoping Marcos has got our copy. I know last time when we did the down payment assistance, quick rundown of the process. I think Edmund, you had stated that we had some confusion in the information, and hopefully now we are on the same page with Pima County. So I hope you like that down payment assistance on our HCD website. And I will let Neto put that in the chat. Have any questions? And it is subject to change because we do get some changes through, especially once a year, and on the home purchases for new and existing. So, and Marcos, I don't know if you'd like to add anything.
Well, just real quickly, yeah, we're just a little behind in getting the updated brochure posted on our website. We've had some staffing issues the last few weeks, but hopefully we will get caught up in the next week or two here. I'm pretty confident we can get it posted by next week, so that we'll have the up-to-date brochure posted on our website as well. But that's
okay. Thank you, Marcos. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
You bet. I was just thumbing through the annual report, and there's some great pictures of the Housing Commission. So I'd encourage everybody to click on the link. It's in the chat area. So thank you, Liz. Any final questions for HCD? Okay, so next meeting is June 2nd. We'd like to see all the subcommittees meet before then. We've talked about a deeper dive into the equity discussion as an agenda item. Are there any other agenda items that members would like to see? Shay?
Yeah, I think we're going through our budget too right now, right? The city of Tucson is also in that review more or less right now. So I was talking to Sarah Megason and realizing, it's just been such a challenge to get projects pushed through right now, construction projects, and there's a big holdup in permitting. And one of the, again, just really valuable tools that we lost was over-the-counter review. And we just don't have, I guess, the staff to staff that. And all these fees that go through that department, they collect, all these permit fees, they see all these impact fees, they don't receive almost any of that, and it goes into the general fund, right? So can we ask the general, fund to fully fund PDSD. I just feel like it's going to be critical for projects moving forward, and that they have our support.
Yeah, so that's great. I'm glad you brought that up, Shay. So there's going to be a public hearing, I believe. And so what I'll do is I'll ask Neto to share the budget timeline. And so definitely put those comments in. I can tell you what it's looking like is what's being proposed and submitted for this fiscal year is not really taking into account some of the what we call supplemental requests or additional staffing, because there is an election coming up around Proposition 411, which is around street improvements. And so mayor and council want to wait and see the results of that election before they kind of dip into the extra reserves that the city has. Should that not pass, they'll have to redo the budget. If it passes, then after that, after probably in June or July, they'll start talking about what additional funding will be given to departments out of general funds. So I just wanted to share that, but that Proposition 411 is critical to the decision-making around the budget. And so if anyone has questions around 411, happy to share information, but that is strictly around street improvements. It's extending the 0.5 cent sales tax or tax. So it's not sales tax. So anyways, I'm not the best person to speak on it, but that I think now is the time to let mayor and council know where the needs are and where you feel funding needs to be increased.
Ernesto?
Jim, would you like HCD to invite the new equity officer to the June meeting?
Yeah, I think so. That's the Laurice Walker.
Correct.
Is that the correct pronunciation? Correct. Yeah.
Okay. So
I think that would be great.
I'll work with Director Morales and extend an invitation.
Okay, thank you. I do have, you know how they say confession is good for the soul and bad for the reputation? I do have a confession to make. We were supposed to get a communication out to mayor and council this last month, and I did not make that happen. So I'm gonna get on that this next month and I'll make sure it does happen before our next meeting. So I apologize about that. Any other agenda items? Okay, well, it is 5:43 and the commission is now adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.